I trusted her with everything. She worked in banking. She knew the system. And while I thought she was helping me, she was stealing from me. £505,000. Gone. Hidden accounts. Fake names. All under my nose. I met Simone on a Tuesday afternoon in a cafe near Ayala Center. I remember because Tuesdays were the days I'd force myself out of the condo, away from the silence that had become my only companion since the divorce. The cafe had decent coffee and free internet, and I'd sit there for hours pretending I had somewhere to be. She was at the next table, typing on a laptop, her brow furrowed in concentration. When she looked up and caught me staring, I felt embarrassed, but she smiled, not the practiced smile I'd gotten used to from women who worked in hospitality. A real one. "You look lost," she said. Her English was perfect, barely an accent. I laughed because it was true. "That obvious?" I asked. She closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. "I work in banking. I'm trained to read people. You have that expat look. New to Cebu?" I told her I'd been here 6 months. "Retired. Needed a change." She nodded like she understood. "Glasgow?" she asked, picking up on my accent. "Aye. How'd you know?" She shrugged. "I watch a lot of British television. Line of Duty, Bodyguard, all that." We talked for 2 hours. She told me she worked as an administrator at a local bank, handling account management and compliance. She'd studied finance in Manila, came back to Cebu to be closer to her family. She was 38, divorced, no children. When I finally stood to leave, she asked if I'd be back on Tuesday. I said yes before I even thought about it. The next Tuesday, she was already there when I arrived. She waved me over, had already ordered me a flat white. "I hope that's okay," she said. I remembered from last week. I sat down, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Scene. We fell into a routine after that. Every Tuesday, then Thursdays too. Sometimes we'd walk along the waterfront after coffee. She asked about my life in Glasgow, my business, my retirement. I told her about the manufacturing company I'd built and sold, the divorce that had gutted me, the grown children who barely called. "You must be comfortable," she said one day. Not prying, just observing. I did well, I admitted. "But money doesn't keep you warm at night, does it?" She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "No, it doesn't." That was the first time she touched me. 3 months after we met, she mentioned something that would change everything. We were having dinner at a restaurant in IT Park. I'd just paid the bill, and she was looking at the receipt. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." She hesitated. "Your finances. Do you have someone managing them? An advisor?" I shrugged. "I handle it myself. Online banking, mostly." "Why?" She bit her lip. "I don't mean to overstep. It's just, in my work, I see a lot of expats who lose money through inefficiency. Multiple accounts, poor exchange rates, low interest rates. You could be doing better." I felt defensive for a moment, then curious. "How much better?" She pulled out her phone, opened a calculator app. "May I?" I gave her rough numbers. What I had in UK accounts, what I'd moved to the Philippines, my monthly expenses. She tapped away, then showed me the screen. "You're losing about £3,000 a year just in fees and poor rates. Maybe more." I stared at the number. "That much?" She nodded. "I could help. If you want, consolidate accounts, set up better structures. It's what I do. I should have been cautious. I should have asked questions. But I was lonely, and she was beautiful, and she made me feel like someone worth caring about." "All right," I said. "Let's do it." The next week, Simone came to my condo with a leather folder full of papers. She'd mapped out my entire financial situation like a military operation. "This is your current setup," she said, spreading documents across my dining table. 6 accounts, 3 in the UK, 3 here. You're paying maintenance fees on all of them. Your savings account in Glasgow is earning 0.1% interest. That's criminal. I looked at the papers, feeling overwhelmed. What do you suggest? She pulled out a new set of documents, color-coded and labeled. Consolidate. 2 accounts. One in the UK for your pension deposits, one here for living expenses. I can set up automatic transfers at better exchange rates. You'll save at least $2,000 a month. £2,000. I did the math. $24,000 a year. How? I asked. She walked me through it, step by step. Foreign exchange partnerships her bank had, higher interest products, tax-efficient structures. It all sounded reasonable, professional. I'll need access to your online banking, she said, just to set everything up. Once it's done, you'll have full control. I'll teach you how to monitor everything. I gave her my passwords that night. All of them. She sat at my laptop for 3 hours, clicking through screens, making phone calls in Cebuano I couldn't understand, filling out forms. Done, she finally said, leaning back with a satisfied smile. Give it a week. You'll see the difference. I kissed her for the first time that night. She kissed me back, and I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. Hope. She was right about the accounts. Within 2 weeks, I could see the consolidation working. My UK pension now deposited directly into one account. She'd set up an automatic transfer that converted pounds to pesos at what she promised was a preferential rate. My local account showed regular deposits, easy to track. See? She said, pointing at my laptop screen. Clean, simple, efficient. I pulled her onto my lap. You're brilliant. She laughed. I'm just good at my job. But it was more than the accounts. She started staying over. First 1 night a week, then 2. Then she never really left. She'd cook breakfast, kiss me goodbye before work, come back in the evenings with groceries. She made my condo feel like a home. I introduced her to my expat friends at the weekend barbecues we'd have. This is Simone, I'd say, my arm around her waist. My partner. She'd smile and charm everyone, talking finance with the retired accountants, swapping recipes with the wives. You're a lucky man, Jules, my friend Graham said one night. Don't let that one go. I didn't plan to. 6 months after she'd reorganized my accounts, Simone brought up the joint account. We were lying in bed, the ceiling fan spinning slowly above us. I've been thinking, she said. About what? I asked, my fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. We're living together, sharing expenses. It would be easier if we had a joint account for household things, groceries, utilities, entertainment. I turned to look at her. Makes sense. She propped herself up on one elbow. You're sure? I don't want you to think I'm after your money. I laughed. Love, you've saved me more money than most people earn in a year. I trust you completely. The next day, we went to her bank together. She knew everyone there, greeted them in Cebuano, introduced me as her partner. The account manager smiled knowingly. Joint account? He asked. Yes, Simone said, for household expenses. She'd already prepared all the paperwork. I signed where she indicated, barely reading the fine print. When it was done, she transferred £10,000 into the account as a starting balance. That should cover us for a while, I said. She kissed my cheek. Perfect. Everything ran smoothly for months. Better than smoothly. I was happier than I'd been in a decade. Simone and I traveled to Bohol, to Palawan, to Siargao. We talked about the future, maybe buying a house together, maybe something more permanent between us. Then one afternoon, she came home with more papers. What's all this? I asked. She set her bag down, looking tired. Work stuff, but also something for us. Tax optimization, my manager suggested it. With the amount of money you're moving between countries, there are better structures. Legal, approved by BIR. BIR was the Philippine Tax Authority. I knew that much. What kind of structures? I asked. She spread the papers out. Investment vehicles, diversification accounts, emergency backup accounts in case something happens to the primary ones. It's standard for high net worth individuals. High net worth. I liked how that sounded. Do I need to do anything? I asked. She pointed to signature lines on multiple documents. Just sign. I'll handle the filings. Some of these need to be done this week or we'll miss the tax deadline. I picked up the first document. It was dense, with legal language, terms I didn't fully understand. What's this one? I asked. Investment holding account, she said quickly. It's for your dividend payments. Better tax treatment. She was already holding out a pen. I trust you, I said, signing. She smiled. I know you do. I signed 6 documents that night. She explained each one quickly, almost dismissively, like they were routine. Tax optimization, investment diversification, emergency backup protocols. I trusted her professional judgment. Why wouldn't I? She'd proven herself 100 times over. When I finished, she kissed me, then laughed. You're too trusting, you know that? I grinned. Only with you. She kissed me again. Good. The first red flag came 2 weeks later. I was at the bank, depositing a check, when the teller looked at my ID, then at her screen, then called over her supervisor. Mr. Anderson, the supervisor said, are you aware of the new accounts opened under your TIN? TIN was my taxpayer identification number. What new accounts? I asked. She turned her monitor so I could see. 3 accounts listed under my name. I didn't recognize any of the account numbers. These were opened 2 weeks ago, she said. All linked to your primary identification. I felt a spike of confusion. I didn't open those. She looked uncomfortable. Perhaps your authorized representative did? It shows here that a Miss Simone Navarro has power of attorney on your accounts. Power of attorney. I didn't remember signing anything about that. But then again, there had been so many papers. Right, I said, forcing a smile. My partner handles these things. Must have slipped my mind. The supervisor nodded, looking relieved. Of course, just wanted to confirm. Security purposes. I left the bank feeling uneasy. When I got home, Simone wasn't there. I called her. Hey, love, she answered. Everything okay? I tried to keep my voice casual. Yeah, just had a question. The bank mentioned some new accounts opened under my name. Do you know anything about that? There was a pause. Then she said, Oh, those. Yes, they're part of the tax optimization structure we set up. Remember? Emergency backup accounts. I told you about them. Had she? I couldn't remember. Right, I said. Just wanted to check. Jules, are you worried? She asked. Her voice had an edge to it I didn't recognize. No, I said quickly. Just wanted to understand. I'm doing this for us, she said. To protect your money. You know that, right? I felt guilty for questioning her. Of course. I'm sorry. Her voice softened. It's okay. I know it's confusing. We'll go over everything this weekend. I'll show you exactly what each account does. All right? I felt relieved. All right. That weekend never came. She was too busy with work. Then her mother was sick. Then there was a banking conference in Manila. Every time I brought it up, there was a reason to postpone. So I stopped asking. 3 months later, I started noticing the discrepancies. Small things at first. My UK account balance seemed lower than I expected. Not dramatically, just a few £1,000s here and there. I checked my transaction history. There were transfers I didn't recognize, labeled things like FX optimization and investment holding transfer. I called Simone at work. Can you explain these transactions? I asked, reading her the descriptions. Of course, she said, not missing a beat. Those are the automated transfers we set up, remember? Moving money to higher interest accounts. It's all part of the structure. I pulled up my online banking, squinting at the screen. But where's the money going exactly? I heard her sigh. Jules, it's going into the investment vehicles, the ones you signed for. You'll see it when the quarterly statements come. It's still your money. It's just working harder for you. That made sense, I supposed. And what about this one? I asked. Tax compliance hold, £5,000. Currency hold, she said. When you move large amounts between countries, sometimes they need to verify tax compliance. It gets released after processing, usually takes 30 days. 30 days. Okay, I could wait 30 days. Sorry, I said. I'd just like to understand where everything is. I know, she said. Her voice was patient, but I could hear the irritation underneath. That's why I'm handling it, so you don't have to worry about these details. Trust me, okay? I trusted her. So I let it go. But she changed after that conversation. Subtle things. She was less affectionate, spent more time at work. When I asked about her day, her answers were vague. Busy, she'd say, the usual. She stopped cooking, stopped initiating intimacy. Some nights, she wouldn't come home at all. Working late, she'd text, "Don't wait up." I tried to give her space, tried not to be needy, but the distance grew. I wondered if I'd done something wrong, if I'd questioned her too much, made her feel like I didn't trust her. So I tried harder, bought her gifts, took her to expensive restaurants, told her how much I appreciated everything she did for me. She'd smile and say thank you, but the warmth was gone. I was losing her, and I didn't know how to get her back. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Wednesday morning. I was having coffee on my balcony when my phone rang. Unknown number, UK country code. "Mr. Jules Anderson?" a woman's voice asked. "Speaking. This is Melissa Crawford from the Fraud Prevention Department at Barclays Bank. We're calling regarding unusual activity on your account." My stomach tightened. What kind of activity? I heard typing. "We've detected multiple large transfers to foreign accounts over the past 6 months. The pattern suggests possible fraudulent access. Can you confirm you authorized these transfers?" My mouth went dry. "What transfers? How much?" More typing. "Total flagged amount is approximately £505,000. Transferred to accounts in the Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore, various account holders." Do these transfers sound familiar? £505,000. £500,000. The balcony tilted. I gripped the railing. No, I managed. I didn't authorize any of that. "I see," she said, her voice professional but concerned. "Mr. Anderson, I need to ask, has anyone else had access to your online banking credentials?" I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Mr. Anderson? Simone." I'd given Simone everything. "Yes," I whispered. "My partner. She was helping me manage my accounts." Silence on the line. Then, "I see. Mr. Anderson, I'm going to need you to come to the nearest branch immediately. We need to freeze your accounts and begin an investigation. Do you have a branch near you in Cebu?" I told her I'd go to the HSBC branch downtown. She gave me a reference number and told me to bring identification. When I hung up, I just sat there, staring at nothing. £500,000. Gone. I called Simone. It rang 4 times before she answered. "Hey," she said. She sounded normal, cheerful even. "We need to talk," I said. My voice shook. Now. Her tone shifted. "What's wrong?" I told her about the call, about the flagged transfers, about the £500,000 missing from my accounts. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It's a mistake. It has to be. I'll call the bank. I'll fix this." "Simone, where's my money?" I asked. "It's not gone, Jules. It's in the investment accounts. The bank is probably just flagging the transfers because they look unusual. This happens all the time with international movements. I'll sort it out." Her voice was so calm, so reasonable. I wanted to believe her. "You promise?" I asked. "I promise," she said. "I'll handle it tomorrow. Don't worry." She didn't come home that night. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I sat at my laptop, refreshing my online banking every few minutes. The accounts were frozen. I could see them, but couldn't access them. At 3 in the morning, I logged into an old account I'd forgotten about. A small savings account Simone didn't know existed. It still worked. From there, I could see my full transaction history. I started scrolling. Every transfer, every movement, going back months. That's when I saw them. Accounts I'd never opened. Names I didn't recognize. Simone Navarro, Maria Navarro, Christina Navarro, J&S Holdings Incorporated Pacific Trust Investment Corp. Account after account. And my money flowing into them. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Some transfers labeled investment distribution. Others, tax escrow. Some with no description at all. I clicked on one account. J&S Holdings. Opened 4 months ago. My signature on the application. I didn't remember signing it. But there it was. My name. My ID number. My authorization. The account had received £83,000 in 3 transfers. The current balance was 0. I checked another account, Christina Navarro, £62,000 deposited over 2 months. Balance, 0. I went through every account I could find, 12 in total, over £500,000 deposited, all of them empty now. Drained, I ran to the bathroom and vomited. When there was nothing left, I sat on the cold tile floor, shaking. Simone had stolen everything. Not all at once, slowly, carefully, while I trusted her, while I loved her, while I gave her everything she needed to destroy me. The sun came up, and I was still sitting there. Simone finally came back Friday afternoon. 2 days of silence. No calls returned. No texts answered. I heard her key in the lock, and I stood up from the couch where I'd been sitting for hours. She walked in carrying shopping bags. She looked surprised to see me. "Jules," she said, "I didn't think you'd be here." I had printouts spread across the coffee table. Transaction records, account statements, everything I'd found. "Sit down," I said. My voice was flat. She looked at the papers, and something flickered across her face. Then she set down her bags and sat. "I can explain," she said. I picked up the first printout. J&S Holdings, £83,000, your account. She didn't deny it. "Jules, listen to me. Christina Navarro," I continued, "your sister, £62,000. Please, let me explain." I slammed the papers down. "Explain what?" "How you stole £500,000 from me. How you opened accounts in your family's names. How you systematically drained everything I had while I thought you loved me." She stood up. "I was protecting your money." I stared at her. "Protecting it?" She moved toward me. "You don't understand how vulnerable you are here, as a foreigner. If something happened to you, your accounts would be frozen. Your family in the UK would take months to access anything. I created backup accounts so your money would be safe, so I could access it if you needed help. The logic was insane. So you put my money in your name? In your sister's name? In fake companies?" She crossed her arms. "They're not fake. They're legal entities, registered with the SEC. Everything is documented." I felt like I was losing my mind. "Simone, the money is gone. All those accounts are empty." "Where did it go?" She hesitated. "It's being held in secure investment vehicles. You'll get it back, with interest." "Show me," I said. "Show me the investments." She looked away. "I can't. Not right now. They're in holding periods, locked for tax purposes." I picked up another printout. "The bank flagged this as fraud, Simone. They've frozen everything. They're starting an investigation." That's when her expression changed. The concern vanished. Her face went cold. "You think I stole from you?" she asked. Her voice was ice. "After everything I've done for you? I saved you thousands. I organized your entire life. I gave you 2 years of my life. I felt something crack inside me. I gave you everything. Access to my accounts, my trust, my love." She laughed. It was harsh, bitter. "Your love? Jules, you were lonely. You would have given anyone your passwords if they smiled at you enough." The words hit like a slap. "That's not true. She stepped closer. Yes, it is. You were desperate. A sad old man who couldn't keep his wife, whose kids don't call. I made you feel special, and you paid for it. That's how this works. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. She grabbed her purse. You want to call it theft? Fine, but you signed every document. You authorized every transfer. You handed me your entire financial life because you were too lazy to manage it yourself. I trusted you, I whispered. She walked to the door, then turned back. That was your mistake. The door slammed. I stood there, alone in the silence, and realized she wasn't coming back. The next morning, I went to see a lawyer. His name was Adi Mercado, recommended by another expat who'd been through something similar. I brought every document I had, every printout, every screenshot. He went through them methodically, his face grave. How much total? He asked. 505,000 pounds, I said. About 37 million pesos. He set down the papers. Mr. Anderson, I need to be honest with you. This is going to be very difficult. I'd expected that. Can we get any of it back? He leaned back in his chair. The money has moved through multiple accounts, multiple countries, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore. Each jurisdiction has different laws. No extradition treaty for this type of fraud between the UK and the Philippines. My chest tightened. So she gets away with it? Adi. Mercado sighed. The challenge is proving criminal intent. You signed authorization documents. You gave her power of attorney. Legally, she had permission to access your accounts. I felt sick, but I didn't know what I was signing. He nodded sympathetically. That's what we'll argue, but courts here move slowly, and she has something very powerful on her side. What? I asked. The paperwork, he said. Everything is documented, every account opening, every transfer, every signature, your signature. He pulled out one of the documents. See this? This is an account application for J&S Holdings. It names you as a beneficial owner. Your signature. Your ID. Notarized. I stared at it. I remembered signing something that looked like that. She'd said it was for tax purposes. What does that mean? I asked. Ati. Mercado met my eyes. It means legally, you weren't defrauded. You were a willing participant in creating these structures, even if you didn't understand them. The room spun. So there's nothing I can do? He was quiet for a moment. We can file a case, estafa, qualified theft, but it will take years. And the burden of proof is on you to show she acted with malicious intent. With this much documentation in her favor, the chances of conviction are low. I slumped in my chair. What about the money? Can we freeze her accounts? He shook his head. The accounts are empty. She's already moved the money. My guess is it's in overseas accounts now. Maybe cryptocurrency, maybe cash. Without cooperation from foreign banks, we'll never trace it. I couldn't breathe. So, she just wins? Adi. Mercado's expression was kind, but firm. Mr. Anderson, in cases like this, the scammer usually does win. They're too smart, too careful, and they know exactly how to use the law to protect themselves. I paid him 25,000 pesos for the consultation. He said he'd help if I wanted to file charges, but he made no promises. Walking out of his office, I knew the truth. Simone had planned this from the beginning. Every smile, every touch, every piece of advice. She'd seen me in that cafe and identified a mark. Lonely, wealthy, trusting, and she'd executed a perfect con. I saw her one last time 3 weeks later. I was walking through Ayala Mall, trying to distract myself from everything. I'd sold most of my belongings by then. The condo was too expensive without my savings. I was moving to a smaller place in Lahug. I'd cut my expenses to almost nothing, trying to survive on what little remained. That's when I saw her. She was coming out of a high-end boutique, shopping bags in both hands, laughing. A younger man was with her, mid-30s, Filipino, well-dressed. He had his arm around her waist. I stopped walking. She saw me. For a moment, our eyes met. She didn't look surprised, didn't look guilty. She just looked at me. Then she smiled. That same smile from the cafe 2 years ago. I walked toward her. I don't know why. The man with her tensed. "Simone," I said. My voice shook. She handed her bags to the man. "Wait for me inside," she told him. He glanced at me, then nodded and walked away. We stood there in the middle of the mall. People streaming past us. "I want my money back," I said. She tilted her head. "What money?" I felt rage building. "You know what money. 500,000 pounds. Everything you stole." She laughed softly. "Jules, I didn't steal anything. You gave it to me. Willingly." I pulled out my phone, showed her the transaction records I'd saved. "These accounts, these transfers, you took everything." She glanced at the screen, unbothered. "I have the paperwork, every document you signed, every authorization you gave me. You wanted me to manage your money? I did." "You lied to me," I said. My voice broke. "You said you loved me." Her expression didn't change. "I never said I loved you. You assumed that, because you wanted to believe it." The words landed like physical blows. "I trusted you." She leaned in close. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You were lonely, Jules. I gave you company, someone to share your bed, your home, your life. That was the deal. You paid for it. Just like every other expat who comes here looking for a fantasy." I couldn't speak. She straightened up. "You gave it to me willingly. I have the paperwork to prove it. If you want to take this to court, go ahead. But you'll lose. And you'll spend whatever money you have left on lawyers who can't help you." She started to walk away. I grabbed her arm. She looked down at my hand, then at my face. "Let go," she said. Her voice was cold. "I did." She adjusted her purse strap. "I did you a favor, actually. I taught you something valuable. Don't trust people just because they smile at you. Don't give away your power just because you're afraid of being alone." She walked away. I watched her disappear into the crowd, those shopping bags swinging from her arm. Bags I'd paid for. I stood there for a long time. People bumped into me, annoyed. I didn't move. I was 71 years old. I'd worked my entire life, built a business from nothing, raised children, survived a divorce, retired with enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my days. And in 2 years, a woman who worked in banking administration had taken it all. Not with a gun, not with threats, with paperwork, with trust, with the thing I'd wanted most, connection. I moved into a studio apartment in La Hougue 2 weeks later. It cost 6,000 pesos a month. 1 room, a tiny bathroom, a hot plate for cooking. I sold my furniture, my television, everything I didn't absolutely need. My UK pension still deposited each month, £1,400, after conversion and transfer fees, about 85,000 pesos. It was enough to survive, barely. I stopped going to the expat barbecues, stopped seeing my friends. I couldn't bear the questions, the sympathy, the inevitable moment when someone would say, "I told you to be careful." I told no one back home, not my ex-wife, not my children. The shame was too heavy. How do you tell your family you lost £500,000 to a woman you met in a cafe? How do you explain that you handed over your entire financial life to someone you'd known for 3 months? I couldn't, so I carried it alone. Some nights, I'd lie awake and replay every moment, every conversation, every red flag I'd ignored, the bank officer asking about accounts I didn't recognize, the transaction descriptions that didn't make sense, the way Simone's affection cooled the moment I started asking questions. It had all been there, the truth, right in front of me, and I'd chosen not to see it, because seeing it would have meant accepting that I was alone again, that the connection I felt was a lie, that the woman who made me coffee and held my hand and shared my bed was acting, performing, executing a plan. I'd chosen the fantasy over reality, and I'd paid for it. The worst part wasn't the money. I know that sounds insane. £500,000 is a devastating loss. It destroyed my retirement, my security, my future. But the worst part was the realization that I'd been a mark from day one, that every smile had been calculated, every touch strategic. Every moment of apparent intimacy was just another step in a carefully planned con. She'd never loved me, never even liked me. I was a job, a target, a lonely old man with money and weak boundaries. And she'd played me perfectly. 6 months after everything fell apart, I started volunteering at an expat support group that met every Wednesday at a church in Benilad. Most of the people there were going through visa issues or family problems. But occasionally, someone would show up with a story like mine: romance scam, financial fraud, trust destroyed. I'd listen to them tell their stories, the woman they met online, the emergency that required money, the business opportunity that disappeared, the boyfriend who vanished, and I'd see myself in every single one. That same desperate need to believe. That same willingness to ignore the red flags, because loneliness is worse than doubt. I started sharing my story too, not all of it, just enough. I met someone who worked in banking. I'd say. She offered to help me manage my money. I gave her access to everything. She stole £500,000. People would gasp, ask how. I'd explain. The paperwork, the fake accounts, the systematic transfers, the perfect documentation that made it all legal. Did you get any of it back? They'd ask. I'd shake my head. No, and I won't. She was too smart, too careful. She knew exactly what she was doing. Then I'd tell them the part that mattered. Don't do what I did. Don't give anyone access to your finances, no matter how much you trust them. Don't sign papers you don't understand. Don't let loneliness make you stupid. Some of them would listen. Some wouldn't. I understood. When you're drowning in isolation, a hand reaching out looks like salvation, even if it's pulling you under. I kept my distance from romantic relationships after that. A few women showed interest. I was polite but distant. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't trust my own judgment anymore. If I'd been so wrong about Simone, how could I trust myself with anyone else? So I stayed alone. It was safer that way. I still think about her sometimes, wonder where she is, what she's doing, whether she ever thinks about me. Probably not. I was a job she completed successfully. Why would she waste time thinking about it? Sometimes I imagine running into her again, what I'd say, what she'd say. In my fantasies, I'm eloquent, cutting. I devastate her with words. I make her feel a fraction of what she made me feel. But I know the truth. If I saw her again, I'd probably just freeze, like I did that day in the mall. I'd see her smile, and for a moment, I'd remember what it felt like to believe that smile was real. That's the thing about being conned. The hardest part isn't losing the money. It's losing the ability to trust yourself. Every decision feels suspect now. Every kindness feels like manipulation. I second-guess everything, even simple things. When a server is friendly, I wonder what they want. When someone strikes up a conversation, I look for the angle. I've become the thing I never wanted to be. Cynical, suspicious, closed off. But I'm still here. That counts for something. I'm 72 now, living in a studio apartment in La Hougue, surviving on my pension, volunteering on Wednesdays. It's not the retirement I planned, not the life I imagined, but it's my life. I've learned things I wish I didn't know. That love can be a weapon. That expertise can be used to exploit. That loneliness makes people vulnerable in ways they don't understand until it's too late. I've learned that some people see relationships as transactions, that for them, intimacy is just a tool, a way to access what they really want. And I've learned that the legal system protects the smart criminals, the ones who know how to document their theft, who understand that a signature on the right piece of paper is worth more than truth. I don't hate Simone. I should, but I don't. Hatred requires energy I don't have. Instead, I feel something closer to pity, not for me, for her. Because she's spent her life perfecting the art of the con, of identifying vulnerable people and extracting everything they have. And I wonder what that does to a person, what it costs to live that way, to never have a real connection, to view every relationship as a potential score. Maybe she's happy, maybe the money was worth it, maybe she sleeps fine at night, or maybe she's just as empty as I was when I met her, just filling the void with different things. Shopping bags instead of coffee dates, transactions instead of trust. I'll never know. And it doesn't matter. What matters is that I survived. I'm still breathing, still walking, still showing up on Wednesdays to help other people avoid what happened to me. I'm not the man I was 2 years ago. That man was naive, desperate, willing to overlook obvious red flags because he couldn't face being alone. This man is different, harder, more careful, less trusting. I don't know if that's better or worse, but it's who I am now. The man Simone made me. No, that's not fair. The man I became because of what happened with Simone, because I chose to trust too quickly, to give too much, to believe too easily. Those were my choices. She exploited them, but they were still mine. And that's what I tell the people who come to the Wednesday meetings. This wasn't just something that happened to me, I say. It was something I participated in. I made choices, bad choices, and I'm living with the consequences. Some of them don't want to hear that. They want to be pure victims, blameless. I understand that too. It's easier, but it's not helpful, because if you don't own your part in it, you can't learn from it. You can't change. You'll just do it again with someone else. I don't have much now. My studio apartment, my pension, a few clothes, some books, my laptop. That's it. Everything else is gone. But I have something I didn't have before. Clarity. I know who I am now. An old man who made a catastrophic mistake, who gave everything to someone who saw him as a mark, who lost £500,000 because he was too lonely to see the truth. And I know who I'm not. I'm not special. I'm not uniquely unlucky. I'm not the only person this has happened to. I'm one of thousands, tens of thousands. Lonely people who came to Southeast Asia looking for connection and found predators instead. The only difference is I'm talking about it, owning it, warning others. Maybe that's my purpose now. Maybe losing everything was the price I paid to learn a lesson I can share. That loneliness is not an emergency that requires immediate resolution. That trust should be earned slowly. That access to your financial life is a privilege that should be protected. That love, real love, doesn't ask you to sign papers you don't understand. Maybe if I'd heard someone tell this story 3 years ago, I would have made different choices. Probably not. I was too far gone, too desperate, too willing to believe. But maybe someone will hear me now. Someone sitting in a cafe in Cebu or Bangkok or Hanoi. Someone about to give their passwords to a beautiful woman who works in banking. Someone about to sign papers they don't fully understand because they're afraid of being alone. Maybe they'll remember this story. Maybe they'll hesitate. Maybe they'll say no. And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. That's what I tell myself on the hard nights. When the studio apartment feels too small. When the silence gets too loud. When I calculate how much money I'd have now if I'd never met Simone, I tell myself that my loss might save someone else, that my stupidity might be someone else's wisdom, that my £500,000 bought a lesson that could protect thousands of others. It's not much comfort, but it's something. I saw Graham last week, my old friend from the barbecues. He was coming out of a grocery store as I was going in. He looked shocked to see me. "Jules," he said, "where have you been? We've missed you." I shrugged. Around. He looked at my shopping basket. Instant noodles, instant coffee, bread, eggs, the diet of someone living on nothing. His face changed. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I lied. He didn't believe me. "Listen, we're having a barbecue this Saturday. You should come. Everyone would love to see you." I shook my head. Thanks, but I can't. He stepped closer. Jules, what happened? You and Simone were so happy. Then you both just disappeared. I felt my throat tighten. We broke up. He waited for more. I didn't give it. I'm sorry, he finally said. If you need anything. I'm fine, I said again. Really? He looked like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. He just nodded. Take care of yourself, Jules. I watched him walk away, probably going home to his condo in IT Park, his comfortable retirement, his intact savings, his life that didn't implode because he trusted the wrong person. I was happy for him, jealous, but happy. I finished my shopping and went back to my studio, made instant coffee, sat by the window, looked out at Cebu. This city had given me everything I thought I wanted, then taken it all away. But I was still here, still breathing, still surviving, and maybe that's enough. Maybe survival is its own kind of victory. Simone didn't destroy me completely. She tried. She took my money, my dignity, my ability to trust, but she didn't take my life. I'm still here, damaged, poorer, wiser, but here, and tomorrow I'll wake up, make my instant coffee, maybe go for a walk, maybe help someone at the Wednesday meeting, maybe just exist, because that's what you do when everything falls apart. You keep going, not because you want to, not because it's easy, but because the alternative is giving up. And I'm too stubborn for that. Simone taught me a lot of things: how to spot a con, how to read red flags, how devastating betrayal feels. But she also taught me something she didn't intend. She taught me that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can lose everything and still keep breathing, that rock bottom has a floor, and I can stand on it. So I will. I'll stand here in my studio apartment in La Hougue. I'll drink my instant coffee. I'll volunteer on Wednesdays. I'll warn other people about beautiful women who work in banking. And I'll survive. Not happily, not comfortably, but I'll survive. Because that's what Simone didn't count on. She thought taking my money would break me, and it did. But it didn't kill me. And the part of me that's still alive, it's the part she couldn't touch. The part that knows my worth isn't measured in pounds or pesos. The part that understands mistakes don't define you. Recovering from them does. I'm 72 years old. I lost £500,000 to a woman I loved, and I'm still here. Still learning, still growing, still alive. Maybe that's not the ending I wanted, but it's the ending I got, and I'm going to make the most of it.